All right. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Dreambound. A lot of things have been going wrong for Kaine recently, I feel like. He found out that his dad is cheating on his mom. One of the boys in his school is threatening to reveal his crush unless he does his homework and then also gives him some money. There's just a lot going on in Kaine's life right now. This episode takes place directly after that, after Noah and August walked in on Kaine being a little bit more forceful towards Luca, and I just kind of wanted to remind you guys of that before we hopped in. So, let's hop into this and see what else is going to happen to Kaine. Kaine's spirits were desolate as he walked home from school. Luca's threats might not have had a physical presence, but they still weighed on him. Kaine's shoulders were sunken from the pressure of it, his footsteps slow and shambling. Can things get any worse than this? I'm having a real hard time imagining it. The trio walked on in silence until they reached the top of the mountain. See you guys later. Have a nice weekend, Kaine. Yeah, you too. Kaine turned away from them, heading towards his house. He got most of the way there too before he felt someone pull on his sleeve. Kaine, is everything okay? I really wasn't expecting it to be August. Well, I know everything isn't okay, but do you want to talk about it? I'm fine. You don't have to worry about me. August put on a smile that said he most certainly did not buy this. You don't need to lie to me. I know a person who's struggling when I see one. You have a lot on your shoulders, don't you? I might not be able to lift that weight, but I can at least listen. You want to go talk? Kaine nodded before he realized he was nodding. He gazed down at August, feeling oddly helpless. He let August lead him part way back down the mountain, into the familiar riverside. August sat down first, then patted a patch of grass for Kaine to join him. You know, I think there's something about this river that brings people together. In what way? There's someone else I know who sits by this river, looking just as lost as you do right now. I see him some nights, okay? I don't think I've ever really been able to help him, but I do listen. I'm pretty good at listening. Maybe this river has a bit of magic in it that makes people more honest. Magic doesn't exist. Well, I don't know if I agree. I've seen some pretty magical things in this town. What's been weighing on you, Kaine? I feel like everything I've carefully built up is falling down around me. There's just too many things. Kaine trailed off, lifting his gaze from the calm surface of the water. Everywhere I turn, it feels like I'm being cornered. My family is falling apart, I'm having some troubles with someone at school, and I feel like I'm losing Noah. I don't know if my friends would like the real me. Oh, Kaine, you've really had a rough time, haven't you? I just feel stupid complaining about it. There's loads of people out there who have it worse than me. You've spent your life moving from place to place. Noah's family treats him awfully. And I'm just whining that things might fall apart. You're not stupid. Just because someone's lived through a hard life doesn't make yours any less valid. I'm sorry so much is hurting you right now. I wish there was something I could do about it, but I'm here for you. I'll always be here. I'm just one message away if you need someone to listen. August. And I'll listen to every problem you have, no matter how small, even if you think it sounds stupid. I'll never think you sound stupid. He really is a perfect person. No wonder Noah fell in love with him. I never could have competed with him. Thanks, August. It means a lot. Wait, did you say you come out here at night sometimes? August glanced away from Kaine, his fingers toying with a blade of grass. Sometimes I can't sleep at night, and I decide to come down here. I like to sit out by the water. It helps me to think. I know I shouldn't sneak out. It's not really like me at all. It kind of just happened once, and I kept doing it. But I met someone who needed help, so maybe something was calling me here. You should be careful, you know. The mountainside is dark, and I wouldn't want you to fall. And who knows who could be hanging around in the shadows. August smiled towards him. You always worry about everyone around you, don't you? I can't help it when my friends keep making poor decisions. August laughed at that, the sound light and cheery. I'll be careful, I promise. You should spend a little more of your energy caring about yourself, too. Anyway, we should get back before it gets too late, huh? August stood, offering a hand to Kaine. Wryly, Kaine glanced up at August's outstretched fingers, then took his hand. It was soft. Together, they walked back up the mountain before splitting off when they reached their respective homes. Kaine felt a little better. He might not have told August much, but he had found he didn't need to. Simply talking about it all out loud to somebody who wasn't involved did wonders for his mood. That feeling didn't last. Damn. The first thing Kaine noticed when he returned home was that his father's car was parked in the driveway. This was an unusual sight in and of itself, largely because Kaine's father rarely came home before 7 p.m. Even in the previous months, when he had been less overworked, it had been uncommon for Kaine's father to return home sooner than his son. What gives? Kaine was hit with a feeling of misapprehension as he eyed his father's car. Something unusual must have happened to bring him home so early. What could that have been, though? Some sort of accident? Maybe he's sick. But no, my old man's a workaholic. He'd probably do overtime even if he had a broken arm. Besides, I don't think I've ever seen him get sick before. He's too important to get ill. He isn't like us commoners. What could it be, then? Kaine had a sneaking suspicion that he knew exactly why his father had returned so early. But Kaine didn't want to tempt fate. I could always be wrong. At least I hope I'm wrong. Kaine swallowed his anxiety as best he could. Then he let himself into his home. Kaine's home had always been somber, more so during the last few months than ever before. The house was too big for their small family, and it seemed bigger still in the continued absence of Kaine's father. The sheer size of the rooms had, at times, threatened to dwarf Kaine. His parents' house did not feel like a home. It was so quiet and so immaculately tidy, it felt more like a crypt. The atmosphere was more tense now, however, than it usually was, and Kaine soon saw why. His father was there after all, just as his parked car had suggested. He was sitting at the dining table opposite his mother, his fingers steepled together at his front. He lifted his head, however, when Kaine entered the room, and he nodded. So you're back. I was waiting for you. You're not going to say hello or ask me how my day was? For a man who always lectured me about the importance of being polite, you're not being very polite yourself right about now. Maybe you should practice what you preach. Dad. Kaine greeted his father with a nod of his head in turn, trying to disregard all the while the anxiety which squirmed in the pit of his stomach. You're home early today? Did something happen? You could say that, yes. I received an interesting phone call from your mother earlier while I was at work, and I decided it needed addressing. I still have a lot of work to do, of course. Of course. You have to keep reminding us of how important you are, don't you? You can't help yourself. but I was able to move around my schedule to come back earlier today. I thought I owed you as much, given, well, we are family. Wow, how very noble of you. Do you expect me to grovel at your feet and thank you for giving me the time of day? It's not like I'm your only child or anything. This is a rather difficult subject, however. I've meant to broach it myself for quite some time, but I preferred to not upset the status quo around here. But it might be fortunate that you did it for me, Kaine. Dad? Kaine took a seat at the table. He tried to look unconcerned, but his legs had begun to shake. It felt almost as though they had turned to gelatin. What are you talking about? You ought to know. You're the one who told your mother about this, after all. Dear. Kaine's mother, who had been tight-lipped during this affair, looked at her husband with anguished eyes. Kaine's mother had always looked older than her years, but she looked worse than she had been that morning. Her eyes were rimmed with red, as though she had been crying, and the wrinkles about her mouth and under her eyes seemed to have deepened. Kaine was struck then, as he observed his mother, with the sheer wrongness of the situation. What in the world happened? I think I can guess, but I so badly want to be wrong. Did I do the wrong thing? Kaine was mistaken, wasn't he? He said he saw you with some woman. But that can't be true. She must have been a coworker. He was mistaken. Tell him this is all some big misunderstanding. For a few moments, silence reigned. Kaine's father inhaled deeply, as if trying to draw upon a strength which existed beyond his own body. Then he spoke. I am sorry. I don't know how Kaine found out about this, or when he saw us, but our son is rather perceptive. He's a credit to both of us, and he is not incorrect. Everything he told you, it's all true. Dear? Kaine's mother stared at her husband, her face pasty white with shock. What are you talking about? You weren't really seeing another woman, were you? You wouldn't. You would never do such a thing to me, surely. For a few moments, Kaine's father fell quiet. He looked at the tabletop, his expression pensive. Then, after a sizable pause, he spoke. This is a painful thing to admit to, but Kaine is correct. He didn't lie or misunderstand what was going on. No, he can't be. He is. I know you might wish otherwise, but I can't keep hiding the truth from you. Not after all this. I respect you too much for that. He respects her, huh? He sure has a funny way of showing it. I've been cheating on you for the last 6 months, ever since my last office Christmas party. I wasn't sure how to break the news to you, so I kept it to myself. I knew you would find out eventually, of course, that this was only a temporary measure, but I never imagined Kaine would be the one to tell you. Evidently, I wasn't as discreet as I thought. You weren't being discreet at all. Kaine snorted, his arms folded. You were hooking up with your side piece at all hours while you were supposed to be at home with us. There was nothing subtle about it. Yes, you have a point. Kaine's father concurred quietly, his expression unchanging. He didn't raise his voice, and neither did he look particularly upset. His face was so blank it could have been a mask. I was not very subtle, and neither did I treat the pair of you particularly well. You must have been wondering what I was doing, staying out for as many nights as I did. I'm sure that I caused you hardship. For that, I apologize. I ought to have told you what was happening a long time ago. But now you have told your mother, Kaine. You have spared me the hassle. It was weighing on my mind for a long time, when I ought to confess and how best to go about it. But I do not need to do that now. Thank you, Kaine. You've been a big help. What? Kaine stared at his father, stunned into speechlessness. What the hell's wrong with you? Aren't you supposed to be a grown-ass man? You always used to preach to me when I was a kid about taking responsibility for my actions. Where the hell's your sense of responsibility gone now, huh? What sort of father forces his own kid into confessing that he's had an affair? You should have been the one to tell Mom this, not me. Cleaning up after your messes isn't my job. How could you? Thoughts raced through Kaine's head like a flood, but he was too stunned to put a voice to any of them. His father's cool, almost callous confession had robbed him of the ability to speak. It felt like Kaine's body had become untethered from reality. Nothing seemed to make sense. His whole world had tilted upside down. In less than 10 minutes, his perception of his father, which had never been the most positive, had shattered. What was he supposed to do now? Dear. Oh God, dear. You can't be serious, can you? Please tell me this is a joke. Kaine's mother, however, didn't seem to want to accept the truth. She looked at her husband imploringly, with the lost eyes of a child, hoping against hope that he would have something to say to soothe her. I'm sorry, but it wasn't to be. You should know that I'm not the sort of person to tell jokes, and I definitely wouldn't make light of a situation like this. Kaine is right. I've been lying to you for a long time. It's a poor way to repay you, I know, for the many years we've been together and the happiness you've given me. But that's simply the way it is. I've already moved on. And for your own sake, I would advise you to do the same. Nothing good can come of clinging to a man like me. No, wait, dear. Kaine's mother called after her husband, but to little avail. He had already gotten to his feet. He looked down at his wife, who remained sitting, 2 tear tracks staining her cheeks like snail trails, and gross. Her mascara was smudged down her face, black smudges caught in the creases beneath her eyes. Kaine's mother looked old beyond her years, but the smeared makeup made her look even older than she already was. She looked decrepit. Kaine's father observed her mutely, with something resembling pity in his face, before he turned his head. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. I can't imagine you'll want to share a bed with me now, knowing what you do. And if you do, then I would ask you to respect yourself more. You deserve better. I don't care about having better, though. I only want you. I still love you. Then you're even more of a fool than I thought. We can discuss what we'll do with the house later, and with our finances once we've settled the divorce. Until then, I'll give you a bit of time to adjust. I'll see you later. Kaine's father departed after this, the front door closing behind him with a thud. In his absence, the silence which filled the kitchen was suffocating. It filled Kaine up, stopping the flow of air into his lungs. He couldn't breathe. He had forgotten how. Oh God! Oh God! For several moments, Kaine's mother simply sat there, her eyes wide with hurt and shock. She stared at the wall opposite her, her expression an intense, almost inhuman, blank. Oh God! Before she began to cry. The tears which sluiced down his mother's cheeks were nothing like anything Kaine had seen before. They were desperate, each and every one accompanied by a pained gasp. Her chest rose up and down from the sheer exertion of crying, and her shoulders shook from it. Her body was trembling so much she looked as though she might collapse beneath the weight of her own misery. Her head bowed, as though it was too heavy for her body. Then she pressed her hands against her face. Kaine could no longer see his mother's pitiful tears, but he could still hear them. He did not think he would ever forget this sound, nor this sight. He had never seen his mother like this before, bent double, like a woman simultaneously younger and older than she really was. She sobbed like a young child, but she wheezed like an old woman. In an instant, her whole world had fallen apart around her, and she, too, was falling apart. Mom. Kaine eyed her uneasily, unsure of what to do. Was there any way he could console her? It seemed unlikely that words could help when his mother's marriage had just dissolved, a marriage which had lasted for over 2 decades. But Kaine couldn't simply sit there, watching her cry as though she was some sort of modern art installation. He had to say something. Mom, I don't know what to say, but I'm sure everything will be alright. Dad might change his mind, you know? You've been together for a long time. I don't think he's that cold. He'll apologize in due course. He's gotta after everything he did. And if he doesn't, and he really does go through with the divorce, then that means there wasn't anything great about him to begin with. I mean, that bastard cheated on you. He's been cheating on you for months. He isn't worth your tears. You know what he's really like now, so... Kaine. Kaine's mother let her hands fall from her face. She wiped her eyes with the back of her arm and swallowed her remaining tears, though her shoulders still shook. She examined her son with narrowed eyes. Then, in a voice which was surprisingly cool and even, given the intensity of her earlier sobbing, she said, "Don't. Please. Don't?" Kaine looked at his mother, bewilderment written on his face. "Don't what?" "Don't try to comfort me. I know you mean well, but your words, they're all hollow. You have no idea how much I love your father. You have no idea how much he means to me. So don't try to reassure me. There's nothing you can say which would make it better. In fact, I think you've said too much already." "Mom?" "Yes, that's right. If only you kept your mouth shut, none of this would be happening. If you'd not told me about your father, then I'd not know about any of this. I never would have confronted him." Kaine's mother grit her teeth together. Her face twisted, her features distorting until she looked almost monstrous. "And he wouldn't have left me. We'd still be happy together, a loving, perfect family. We could have had all of that. We did have all of that. But you ruined it." "What?" Kaine stared at his mother, his jaw slack. He was so stunned by this injustice, he didn't know how to vocalize it. He hardly even knew what to think about it. "That's not fair. You're talking like this is all my fault, but I'm not the one who made Dad cheat on you. I didn't do anything wrong, I just..." "Enough." Kaine's mother cut across her son's retorts. Her voice was high-pitched and shrill. It sounded nothing like the kind, gentle voice Kaine knew from his childhood, the voice which had recited fairy tales to him at night to lull him off to sleep. It sounded nothing like the heartbroken woman from earlier, either, who had been sobbing over her husband's infidelity. Her voice was full of hatred, but it was not hatred directed at her husband, who had hurt her. Her husband was not there. Kaine's mother could not vent out her frustrations on him. So instead, she chose to do it on her son. He was the only person who she could lash out at. He was the only person she could hurt. You say you didn't do anything wrong, but that's a child's excuse. You aren't a child, are you, Kaine? You're almost 18 already. I know, but nothing. You're almost an adult, so you should take some responsibility for what you've done. You've torn our family apart. No, I didn't. That wasn't what I wanted. I don't care what you wanted. It doesn't matter. Not when you look at the results. Intentional or not, you've ruined our family. If only you'd kept what you'd seen to yourself, we could have kept on just like we always did. I wish you hadn't told me. I would have been much, much happier not knowing. You've been so ungrateful. Ungrateful? That's right. You're ungrateful. I've worked my fingers to the bone for this family. I've cooked for you, and I've cleaned for you, and I've taken good care of you for years and years. I've always put my happiness before yours, and this is how you repay me? I've always put my happiness before yours. Isn't that supposed to be the opposite? You make me doubt the man I love more than anybody else, and you ruin my relationship? How could you, Kaine? How could you? I thought I raised you better than this. I thought that you loved me. Kaine's mother dissolved, once again, into a fit of tears. Her upper body slumped forwards, and she lifted her hands as if to support it. She pressed her palms against her face, her whole body quaking, and she sobbed. She sobbed so loudly with such renewed vigor that Kaine shuddered. What was he supposed to say? What was he supposed to do? He had half a mind to correct her, but Kaine knew there was no point in that. That wouldn't make his mother feel any better. It wouldn't make him feel any better either. Kaine wanted to argue with her. But more than that, he wanted to get away from her. He couldn't spend time with his mother anymore, not when she was like this. She had been hurt, and badly. Now, like a wounded animal, she wanted to lash out at anybody who was in her way. Logically, Kaine understood this. He knew his mother probably didn't mean the things she was saying. When she had recovered from the news of her husband's betrayal, and she had once again begun to think rationally, she would begin to regret everything she had said. But until she apologized, Kaine could not spend another second in her company. It hurt too much. Wordlessly, Kaine rose to his feet. He wiped his own eyes with the back of his arm, which were beginning to feel damp. Then he left. He abandoned his mother, who was slumped on the kitchen table, just as his father had before him. Kaine wasn't proud of this, but what other choice did he have? There's nothing I could say that would cheer her up. I already tried, and it didn't work. It's not like I'm running away. I can't deal with this. It really is too much. All right, and with that, I am going to go ahead and end this episode here. I do like how the narration very specifically says that Kaine's mom isn't bad. She's not the bad guy in this situation. She's just hurt, and that eventually, once she has overcome this somewhat emotional reaction, she will probably feel bad about it. I know the game has already said that Kaine and his mother have a somewhat good relationship, even as he is an adult. So I am hopeful that they will get through this together, but I do enjoy the fact that she is three-dimensional enough that she, isn't perfect. She has this moment where she is grieving the loss of her life as she knew it. It's just a really good detail to include in this moment, I feel like. But I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here for now. So thank you for watching this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one for some more Dreambound.